Well, having looked at some of the more formal methods of process improvement, by formal I mean they have a sort of an accepted shape to them, let's have a look at Agile process improvement, where in this we talk, I look at the basic understanding of Agile software development methods and understand how Agile methods deal with improvement, because it can seem fairly ad hoc and loose. Now, with Agile software development, it's an approach to software development, not a specific method. All right, so it's in some ways quite wrong to talk about Agile software development, because there isn't such a thing. It's a collection of different methods. And there we get into arguments about which one's the right one. It doesn't matter. They're all similar. The Agile methods are suited to poorly understood problems or incompletely understood problems that require the collaborative efforts of several people to try and figure out what to build and how to build it. There are various flavors, and some of the early ones were extreme programming, for example, the Crystal methods developed by Alistair Cockburn, Scrum as it's been used as a label for a whole lot of things, but for the moment we'll say, okay, Scrum software development, we'll take that as one of the methods. There are somewhat essential practice and quite a lot of variation after that. Now, I won't go into the Agile software development themselves. I want to talk about the improvement of those methods. So with Agile software development, we assume the developer knows their craft and all sound professional practices. That is, not only do they know how to design an architecture and to code, but they also know about reviews, as peer reviews, formal reviews. They know about tests, they know about versioning, they know about designing and planning. So they're a professional software developer, they know their stuff. Without formal development process, it's easy to fall back into poor practices. We see this quite a lot. Good practice takes time and effort. When resources are constrained, it's easy to skip the practices which seem unnecessary. Now, professionals who've been in the business, say 10 years or so, tend not to go back to code and fix or cowboy hacking, because they know that they're going to have to fix up a problem sooner or later anyway, so they tend to stick to good practice. Now, improvements in the Agile environment. All Agile methods have some form of development cycle that starts with planning and ends with some form of retrospective. That is, there is the time and chance to look at what happened and could we do better. The retrospective is the opportunity to seriously examine what isn't working well and how it could be improved. The improvements are usually aimed at what's hurting most at the time. Now, increments, that is incremental development, allow improvements to be tried, adopted, or abandoned, which is important. You can try to improve something, and if it doesn't, then get rid of it. The improvements should be planned and measured. They shouldn't just be put in because somebody thinks it's a good idea and they're absolutely desperate to do something. Now, you should be able to say, with any improvement, what difference should this improvement make? If we put it in, let's predict, let's have a hypothesis, if we do this, these things will happen. And then when you've done it, you should be able to say, well, did it achieve the expected results? Okay? Having studied some things recently, I would say not only should you predict what should happen, you also should predict what should not happen. So what would be the symptoms of success? What would be the symptoms of failure? Now, this type of improvement suits a method like Six Sigma with their DMAIC type cycle. Less formally, going back in some of the engineering theory, we have the work of Donald Schoen, and recently somebody's drawn my attention to the work also of David Kolb. Both of these theorists and practitioners very much advocated that the engineer should just simply sit and think about things a bit. Donald Schoen described how professionals think in action. That is, problems are framed or viewed from a particular perspective. Outcomes of participants' actions are measured in some way that reflects the perspective, the frame. Participants solve their own problems and implement their own solutions. And there's no attempt to impose externally developed solution. Now this follows from the observation that engineering at the edge, nobody really knows what they're doing. And so it really is a kind of a hacked together, muddled through, cobbled together type thing. And it's at this leading edge or bleeding edge where this reflection and action comes from. Is not intended to replace, well, we've been doing this for 5 years and we really do know what we're supposed to be doing. That doesn't suit this reflection and action. Reflection and action is when you're doing something novel, new, innovative, and you've got to think about, well, could we have done that better? Generally regarded this as an organizational learning rather than process improvement. It's not a process, it's just learning. The method of organizational learning was tested in a fairly well-documented experiment called the cogwheel experiment. The purpose of the experiment was to examine how teams of men operating in an environment composed of complex information flows make decisions under conditions of high stress. Now, this was aimed, I think, at air traffic control, and particularly military air traffic control. There were 4 experiments. They were codenamed Casey, Cowboy, Cobra, and Cogwheel. So Cogwheel had no significance other than it was a word beginning with the letter C. People were given rapid and plentiful in performance feedback. That was all. They were encouraged to make changes that improved performance. And it worked. People did. People always try to do better if they can. So all you need to do is to provide good, lots of measures of the performance and the freedom to go and make changes, and it will work. So the summary for Agile process improvement is that Agile software development does have some sort of a cycle, and it's well suited to making improvements. The improvements to Agile development methods should be planned and measured, same as any other improvements. Agile methods have the potential for more and faster improvement than plan-based methods simply because there's usually a faster turnaround in the processes and faster turnaround in the increments. Plan-based, you might have a cycle of 6 months and take 6 months to get the improvement around. Agile, you might have a release every day, a development cycle a week long. When a week is a lot shorter than 6 months, you should be able to do it much faster. Improving Agile software development is similar to reflection and action. That is, you have some obligation to think about what you're doing and think about what could be improved, make the improvement, and measure the effect.